Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on the finite potential well, and more specifically, I'm going to be solving the finite potential well to find the bound states that exist in it. If you're new to this video, I would recommend going through the infinite potential well video on this channel or any other channel because we have developed a lot of intuition in solving the infinite potential well that we'll be using, and also we'll use some similar mathematical tricks that we use in solving the infinite potential well that we'll be reusing here. So it'll be of great help if you go through these videos. Now to start with the finite potential well, we are going to be solving for bound states. So this is our finite potential well right here. There's a well sort of region where we have zero potential, and then there are these walls all around that have a potential of v equals v naught. And intuitively we can think of bound states as only existing in this region of zero potential. You can think of a classical analogy as a ball trapped inside a well, such that there is no way, the only way the ball will be bound is if it's inside the well. If it's outside the well, the ball is free to move anywhere. However, if it's inside, it's bound. So uh, classical intuition helps us in guessing that the bound states will only exist in this region where we have a potential well. However, there will be some characteristics that will different help us differentiate from classical behavior, and we'll see them as the solutions come. So a useful way of solving the finite potential well is dividing the well into three regions. Region 1 right here, region 2, and region 3. You can see that region 1 and region 3 are very similar in the sense that they both exist in a region where the potential is V naught, and region 2 exists in a region where the potential is 0. So we break down so we as we did in the infinite potential well video, we'll be using the time independent Schrodinger equation to determine the solutions, and we'll be dividing our we'll be using three different regions and solving three different Schrodinger equations and then kind of mixing the solutions. So you can see that I've made a partition for three different regions and we'll solve them one by one. For the first region right here, I've written down the Schrodinger equation. Again, if you don't know how to write this down for a given potential, I would recommend going to the infinite potential video. But if you know, then we've written down the Schrodinger equation right here for a potential V naught, as region 1 exists is in a region which has potential V naught. So we write down the Schrodinger equation right here, and then we'll do some steps. We'll repeat some steps that we did with the infinite potential well. So this becomes minus h cut square upon 2m d square psi upon dx square. Please note that we'll stop writing the x in the bracket right here, and we'll keep in mind the fact that psi is a function of x, because the equations don't so that the equations don't get too cluttered. And we'll take the right hand side on the left hand side, the term on the right hand side on the left hand side, and we'll write it as v naught minus e psi equals 0. And essentially we have taken out the psi of x as a common term, and again we'll be multiplying both sides by minus h cut square by 2m. So this will become d square psi upon dx square. So the term cancels out here, and we have a 2m over h cut square v naught minus e psi equals 0. And similar to what we did in the infinite potential well, we'll make a substitution for the coefficient preceding psi right here. So, and we'll call this kappa. My kappa will always have a sort of ramp right here with the cave. So kappa is equal to 2m v naught minus e upon h cut square. And then with this substitution, the equation becomes pretty clear, and we have d square psi over dx square minus kappa square psi equals 0. Again, this is a differential equation whose solution is pretty well known, and it has and it has the form of psi of x is equal to a e raised to kappa x plus b e raised to minus kappa x. Let me get the x, and this is a general solution of this sort of differential equation right here. Here a and b are arbitrary constants. So this is the solution. This is a general solution for a differential equation, for the kind of a differential equation we have right here with a negative sign in between. We also have to note that kappa is always greater than 0, since kappa is equal to 2m v naught minus e by h cut square, and intuitively we know that all the bound states will exist inside this well, so they'll have some energy, right, some sort of energy, say right here, so it'll always be less than v naught, so v naught will always be greater than e, and then mass of the electron and then h cut are also positive constants, so kappa is always positive. So with that assumption that kappa is always positive, this is the solution we have for a differential equation. Now we can immediately remove one of these terms by noting that region 1 right here extends all the way up to negative infinity. The center of the well is at 0. This is minus L, this is plus L, and the first region extends all the way up to infinity. Now a property that you ought to know is that if we have a bound state, it is supposed to be normalizable. And what that means is, if we integrate the square of the wave function like we did in the infinite well, the probability should add up to 1. The integrating the square of the wave function should give us 1. So say here we put x tending to infinity. Say here if x was tending to, sorry, my bad, x was tending to negative infinity, as region 1 goes to all the way up to negative infinity. This term right here, that is this term right here, you put x equals negative infinity and you have e to the power infinity. Now e to the power infinity is not defined as we know, but if x tends to negative infinity, the solution would blow up. Psi of x would also go to infinity, and there was no way we could, after integrating, we'll have a normalizable wave function. So for x tending to minus infinity, since the wave function has to be finite, we we come to the conclusion that b is equal to 0. So psi of x is equal to a e raised to kappa x. And here in this term, say you put x tending to negative infinity, e raised to negative infinity would come to 0, and we'd have no problem with that since the wave function doesn't blow up. That is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the wave function from blowing up. And now similarly for region 3, since region 3 is also at a similar potential like region 1, the solution will be of the same kind. So the solution right here will, I'll write down the solution straight away, will it'll be e raised to kappa x plus f e raised to minus kappa x. Again here e and f, capital E and f, are arbitrary constants, and similarly as we did right here, on this side, say x was tending to plus infinity as the region 3 does, what would happen is the first term would blow up to infinity, hence our wave function would blow up to infinity, which we do not want. So this gives us the fact that e is equal to 0, since we don't want the wave function to blow up. And we end up with a wave function that is psi of x is equal to f e raised to minus kappa x. Right, so we got the wave function or the behavior of the wave function in the first region and in the third region. For the second region, the solution is quite similar to what we did in the infinite potential well. So quickly rearranging this equation, we get d square psi over dx square plus 2me over h cut square is equal to 0. Oh, sorry, there's a psi right here. And this is the same equation that you had for the finite potential well. And we'll make the substitution k is equal to 2, sorry, k is equal to 2me over h cut square. H cut square. Sorry, I made a mistake in these substitutions. This is supposed to be kappa square, and I substituted for kappa square. You can check right here. And this is k square. Sorry, that was my bad. But yeah, so k square is equal to 2me over h cut square, and so we are left with d square psi over dx square um, plus k square psi is equal to 0. And we know that the general solution for this kind of a differential equation is psi of x is equal to c cos kx plus d sine kx. Again, C and capital D are arbitrary constants, and we don't have any sort of boundary condition that will help us to solve for C and D right now, but we'll see how it works later. So uh, now, an important step that we'll do is that we'll establish some important relations. And what I mean by important relations is that we'll make use of these constants that we define, the k's and the kappas, and we'll establish some relationships that are helpful in looking at the finite potential well. And we'll discover that shifting from the infinite to the finite potential well, we won't be able to determine the solution analytically. We'll only have numerical solutions popping up, but we'll see that as we as we solve the problems. So we'll define a quantity eta, which is equal to k into L, where k, as we defined earlier, is this term right here, and L is half the length of the potential well. And eta will be dimensionless in nature because the dimensions of k you can see right here. Any term that is inside the any term inside a trigonometric function has to be dimensionless in nature, and x has the dimensions of length, so k will have the dimensions of length inverse. So k multiplied by L will be a dimensionless quantity which we call eta, and you can think of eta as a sort of proxy for k, and you'll see why we need to make this proxy. But before that, we'll make one another proxy, which is that c is equal to kappa L. And uh, using these relations, let's calculate what eta square plus c square is. And so this will become k square plus kappa square into L square. So I've taken out the L square common, and we have k square plus kappa square inside. So we have the values of k is right here, and we have the value of uh, k square and kappa square, we have their values right here. So let's add them up. You can add them up and you will get a term of this sort: 2m v naught L square upon h cut square. Adding them up is pretty straightforward, and you can do that on your own. So this term we define as z naught square. Again, I'll highlight this because this is a very important term right here. Z naught square, or Z naught, is a quantity that depends on V naught and L. Now, V naught and L are both quantities that we know. We know how deep our potential is, and we know how wide our potential is. And so Z naught is a quantity that is only dependent on known parameters, and it will help us as we go forward. So let's see how let's see some other relations. So this is the first relation that we establish. The second relation that we establish is, we know that eta square is equal to k square L square. So this is simply squaring this equation on both sides. And so substituting the value of k, we get 2me over h cut square. So we see that in this term right here, there's a V naught, and here we don't have a V naught. So essentially what we'll do is this: we'll multiply and divide by V naught. So we'll have 2m V naught L square over h cut square into E, that was the remaining term, by V naught. and the first term in the multiplication is simply z naught square. So we have z naught square into E by V naught. And then taking the z naught square on the left hand side, we have eta square over z naught square is equal to E by V naught. Now this relation is very interesting, because on the right side of this equation we have E by V naught. So this depending on the energy level of the bound state, this tells us how deep the bound state is inside the well. And on the left hand side we have eta, which is an unknown quantity, and z naught, which is a known quantity. So eta square is this equation is very interesting in the way that it tells us how deep our bound state is, and how eta relates to that. um, and similarly we have another relation right here, which will be as follows. We have c square is equal to kappa square L square, and again we'll be substituting for kappa, so we have 2m v naught minus E L square over h cut square. And we'll be making a different sort of shifting right here. We'll make v naught minus E as the principal. So shifting will make the v naught minus E as principal, so we'll shift all the terms to the other side. So we get v naught minus E is equal to c square h cut square over 2m L square. And this is this is a sort of relation that tells us how deep our energy level will be, as compared to the energy levels of the infinite potential well. Now how do we know that? So this term right here, h cut square upon 2 ml square, is the ground state, the first state of the infinite potential well. So that multiplied by c square will tell us how relatively deep our bound state is. So these two relations are just sort of helpful in the practical, when you are dealing with practical situations. But so this is all that will be establishing the relations for. Now we'll actually see how these wave functions look like. So let's solve for constants, let's say. And to start with, we'll use a property that we discussed in the infinite potential well, and that is that if we have a symmetric potential that is about, which means that about the center of the well, this dashed line right here, if the potential is symmetric, which in our case it is symmetric in length and in terms of the potential that exists, as in these walls have a similar potential at the exact same length about the middle of the well. If our potential is symmetric, then we'll have even and odd bound states. The wave functions will be even or odd, and we'll make use of this fact, and we'll solve for even and odd states separately, and we'll see why we do that in a moment. So first we'll solve for even solutions. So for even solutions, uh, for our sort of well right here, excuse my diagram, this is L equals 0 right here, and say we have some sort of bound state which has energy right here. The first even state will be a sort of like this. It'll be even about the center of the well. So depending on whether you go to the right side of the well or right side of the center, excuse me, or the left side of the center, you will have similar behavior. So how that impacts us is that for the bound state right here, for even solutions, we only know that we can only have even solutions if we have a cosine function, because sine functions are essentially odd about the center, about x equals 0. So we'll only have the cosine term for even solution. So for even, and so knowing that we only have cosines, we'll start substituting some boundary conditions. So for region 1, region 2, and region 3, We'll use the subscript to denote the region. So there'll be two boundary conditions that we'll be applying. The one is that psi is continuous at x equals L, and since the Schrodinger equation is a second order differential equation, psi prime is also continuous at x equals minus L. It's also continuous at x equals L, but we can use any of these conditions, and for the purpose of this video I'll be using the condition at minus L. So since psi is continuous at x equals minus L, and we have these regions 1, 2 and 3 right here, psi 1 of minus L is equal to psi 2 of minus L, which means that the value of the wave function in the first region is equal to the value of the wave function in the second region at this boundary, at this wall right here. So substituting for x equals minus L, right here we get, uh, so substituting for x equals minus L here and then here, we have that a e raised to minus kappa L is equal to c cos kl. So we'll have k of minus L right here, but since L is a, sorry, since cos is an even function, the minus L is equivalent, or you can just take out the minus sign and we'll have a cos kl. And so this is the first condition, this is the second condition. So we applied the first condition here. The second condition is that psi1 prime, the derivative also has to be equal at the boundary point. So you have minus kappa a e. So you can, here I'll be directly differentiating and substituting x equals minus L. But what you need to do is you have to differentiate psi1 with respect to x, and then you have to substitute x equals minus L. So what you will be left with is minus kappa a raised to minus kappa L equals c k sine k minus L. And this will be, sorry, this will be minus, there will be a minus c because the differential of cos is a minus sign. Now sine, as we said, is sine, as we know, is an even function. Sorry, sine is an now sine, as we know, is an odd function. So the minus L right here can be substituted, the minus sign will come out essentially, and it will cancel with the, so what you have to do is you have to differentiate psi 1 and psi 2 with respect to x, and you have to substitute x equals minus L. But what we get is kappa after differentiating and substituting. What we finally get is kappa a e raised to minus kappa L is equal to minus c sine of minus kl. And again, sine is odd in nature, so the minus sign will come out as a minus sign, and the two minus signs make a plus sign. So we'll remove the minus signs, and this is what we're left with. Let's call this equation 1 and let's call this equation 2. Dividing equation 2 by equation 1, so dividing 2 by 1, we get, on the left hand side we get kappa because the other term cancel out, and on the right hand side, sorry, this will be, yeah, this will be kc raised to kc sine kl, and on the right hand side we'll be left with k tan kl, since sine kl by cos kl will be tan kl. So this is what we're left with on the right hand side. And now what we'll do is we'll multiply by L on both sides of the equation, which is the length of the potential well. So kappa L equals KL tan KL. And here is where the substitutions have been made in come handy. We know that eta equals KL and C equals kappa L. So we'll simply substitute for them, and we are left with eta is equal to, sorry, this will be C Xi is equal to eta tan eta. And we'll keep this relation in mind. So now what we have to do is we have to find out eta and Xi. And why we need to do that is because once we find out eta and Xi, we can from these relations right here we can divide eta and Xi by L and get k and kappa respectively. And once we get k and kappa, we can determine what the wave function looks like by substituting k and kappa. And at the same time, we can also find the energy of the bound states. So essentially, what we have to find once we find eta and Xi, we'll find the wave function and how it looks like. So we have one relation for two variables, but to solve for two variables, you need two equations. So another equation will be coming from another relation that we derived right here. We know that eta square plus c square equals to z naught square. So let's write that down here. So we have another equation which is eta square plus c square plus eta square equals z naught square. Now what we'll do is we'll plot this equation. So let me get an access on the screen. We have, and we'll plot for Xi against eta. Now you can see that Xi has a tangential dependence on eta. Xi depends on the tan of eta. So our solution for the first equation will be some sort of tangent, how the tangent solution looks like. But for the second equation, for the second relation that we have, this equation, if you can see, is of the form of y square plus x square equals r square. This equation is of a circle, and that is because z naught is a constant right here, which corresponds to the radius, and c and eta are the axis right here. So the thing is, we cannot solve these two equations analytically to find c and eta. We have to do it graphically. So how it looks like when you do it. So let's plot these two functions on our graph right here. So you have eta, let's say you have eta equals pi by 2, eta equals pi, eta equals 3 pi by 2, and eta equals 2 pi. So the first solution, how it looks like, is the strong dependence is on tangent of eta. And so for 0 to pi by 2, it'll look something like this, approaching infinity as eta approaches pi by 2. So this is what it looks like. For the second quadrant, Xi will be negative as tan is negative between pi by 2 and pi. But now we know, we'll get back to our relations again. We know that K is positive since our energy levels, our bound energy levels will always be positive. Will, let's say they lie around here, they'll have positive energy. So our K is positive. And similarly, kappa has a V naught minus E. Now V naught will always be greater than E since we know that our bound states only exist inside the well and not outside the well. And inside the well, the energy of the bound state will always be less than the potential V. So kappa is also positive. So K and kappa are both positive. Since K and kappa are positive and L is also a positive quantity, our eta and Xi will also be positive. So we are only looking for positive values of eta and Xi. So in the region of pi by 2 to pi, Xi will have negative values, but since we are not interested in that, we won't plot them. And then again from pi to 3 pi by 2, they'll have this sort of solution. Again, Xi approaching infinity as eta approaches pi by 2, and so on and so forth. This will keep on going on, but uh, this is what we see. And then uh, for the second relation, we have c square plus eta square equals to z naught square. Now, this is a circle. So in the first quadrant, it will just be an arc, and then the circle will be completed as so. But the radius of the arc that will be in this quadrant right here will depend on how big our z naught is. Now, as we noted earlier, z naught is a quantity dependent only on the quantities that we know, mainly v naught, the depth of the well, and the length of the well, the length of the well. So depending on how big z naught is, we'll have a circle. So say we have a certain value of z naught, that is as so on and so forth. So now once we have plotted these two equations, the solution to find eta and xi, xi and eta, sorry. The solution will be the points of intersection right here, this one point and this second point in this case. So these 2 points are the regions where eta and xi and eta, sorry, satisfy satisfy both of our relations, and and we find xi and eta through this way. So once we have xi and eta, using the relations we have earlier, we can find kappa and k. Once we have kappa and k, we can find the size. So an interesting feature that should be noted here, say if our z naught is very small, hence our circle will be very small. So say we have a small z naught and we have a circle of this sort, and then we'll have only one solution. So the first intersection point corresponds to the deepest bound state, and you can see that the number of even bound states depends on how big our z naught is. So but for even, we can see that irrespective of how small z naught is, we'll always have one intersection, this arc, unless it is this the radius of this arc has a non-zero value, and hence it will always intersect the first tangent line at one point. So we make an important note that however shallow or narrow our potential is, however shallow or narrow our potential is, we will always have one bound state. I'm sorry, that is one even bound state. And once you have, so now given that you've solved this numerically, you've determined xi and eta, and you've determined kappa and k. Now given that you have kappa and k, you know that kappa is a non-zero quantity and so is k. But since kappa is a non-zero quantity, the exponentials right here, so the solution of the wave function has an exponential in kappa, and so since kappa is non-zero, this wave function is also non-zero and it is exponentially decaying outside the well in region 1 and 3. So the solution will look something like this actually, where inside the well it has a cosine function, and then outside the well it sort of decays all the way up to it decays to zero as we increase L. So this is very counterintuitive if you approach this problem from a classical perspective. From the classical perspective of a ball inside a well, the ball can only exist inside the well. It cannot penetrate the walls of the well. However, when you go to quantum scales and these kind of single particle problems, you can always find that a single particle is capable of, to some extent, has a non-zero probability of existing outside the wall. And this is very interesting to note, and it takes some time to get used to, but you should know that this is how quantum nature is, and these are how the wave functions behave. So you notice that we have only solved for even solutions. Now we'll solve for odd solutions. The procedure is very similar, um, odd states, but since we have odd states, inside the well we'll only have signs. So in our region 2 right here, since we have only odd states, only signs will exist since cosines are even. So we'll have only signs. So again, so the wave function will look, the first odd wave function will look roughly like this. So say it has some energy E right here. It'll look like the it'll look like this, and then we'll find that it again decays outside the wells as it goes to infinity, but we'll see by checking that kappa has a non-zero value for odd states as well. So again, we have two boundary conditions. So psi is continuous at x equals minus L, minus L right here. This is 0 and this is L. This is region 1, region 2, region 3. So psi is continuous at x equals minus L, and psi prime is also continuous at x equals minus L. So let's call these condition 1, condition 2. I'll quickly go through this. For condition 1, we have since psi is continuous at x equals minus r, we have a e raised to minus kappa l is equal to d sine k of minus l. Now the minus sign again will go out since sine is an odd function, and this is the first equation that we have. From the second equation, again you have to differentiate with respect to x and substitute x equals minus l. But what you'll be left with is kappa e raised to minus kappa l is equal to d cos k minus L. Sorry, this will be dk cos k of minus L. Again, since cos is an even function, the minus L doesn't matter and we can just write kl. So again, doing dividing equation 2 by equation 1, you get minus k tan, uh, minus k cot kl is equal to kappa. So then, like we did before, we'll multiply both sides of the equation by L, and we have minus KL cot KL is equal to kappa L, and we'll substitute for our dimensionless constants. So we'll be left with minus eta cot eta is equal to C. And again, we'll have to solve this numerically. So we'll have to plot we'll plot these to get an idea of what the solutions look like. So again, we have pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2, 2 pi, and and this is eta, and this is, sorry, this is c, the y-axis is c and x-axis is eta. And you can see that c has a cot dependence on eta, but there's a minus sign right here. So since there's a minus sign, we know that cot eta would have a positive solution between 0 and pi by 2, but since there's a minus sign, or the positive solution will become negative, and in the region of pi by 2 to pi, the negative solution will become positive. So we'll have kind of an opposite behavior to what we see for the tangent. So we'll have something like this. The first relation, the function looks something like this, approaching infinity as eta, c approaching infinity as eta approaches pi. Here again, in this region right here, the solution will be negative for c, and we are not interested in that. Again, for this region right here, we have something like this. Um, c approaching infinity as eta approaches pi by 2, and so on and so forth. And again, we need two equations to solve for two unknown constants, c and eta. So we'll again use the same equation that we used, that was c square plus eta square equals to z naught square. This is the same relation that we use right here. And as we know, this is a circle. So we'll draw a circle right here. Say this is our eta and c. Sorry, let me draw this with blue, because drawing this with blue. And then this intersection point right here will be a solution for c and eta. And again, similarly, once you find c and eta, you can find kappa and k, and you can find psi, and that and we're kind of done with the solution. But similarly to what we did in the even states, we notice here that if you have a really small z naught, say, our circle would look something like this. The arc would look something like this in the first quadrant, let's say. And you can see there's no you can see that there's no intersection between the green line and then the first cotangent curve. So it is very possible that for a narrow and shallow well, if that is what I mean by narrow and shallow, again, is if it's narrow, that is L is small. So here we'll see here, if it's narrow, L is small, and if it's shallow, then V naught is small. So in turn, Z naught is really small. So since Z naught is really small, the radius of our circle is really small. So in that case, there won't be any intersection between the two curves, and no solution exists. So it is entirely possible that for a narrow and shallow well, no odd state exists. and this is important to keep in mind. But for now, that's all that we'll go with. And then it is helpful to kind of draw a couple of these wave functions. So they are very similar to the infinite well, and you can notice that except for one um, change, which is that this is the first wave function, energy E1, let's say, which decays as we found out. It decays. Then the second wave function will be like this, and then again it decays. Excuse my drawing, this is supposed to be at the same level. Let me just redraw this. Oops. And then again, excuse me, again this decays, and then the third level, as we know, will be even again. Answer will be 1, 2, 3, yeah, something like this, so on and so forth. So we can see that with the finite well, we have solutions similar to the infinite well. Again, it's important that you have an idea of how the infinite well solutions look like. But the solutions are similar to the infinite well, but the solutions kind of leak out outside our potential, and that is an important characteristic that comes with the finite potential well. And with the finite potential well, as I said, you should get comfortable with the idea of particles existing outside of our potential wells. And we'll see in later videos that this sort of behavior can lead to phenomena known as tunneling, where a particle can tunnel through a potential barrier, let's say. We'll go into details in later videos, but for now, this is all we'll be dealing with for the finite potential well. If you have any doubts or questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments down below. If you liked my explanation, give this video a like, and thank you for listening.